Today's episode of This Is Only a Test is brought to you by Casper Mattresses. Casper is an obsessively engineered mattress at a shockingly fair price. It combines springy latex and supportive memory foams to create an award-winning sleep surface with just the right amount of sink and just the right bounce. Time Magazine named it one of the best inventions of 2015. If you try a Casper for 100 nights, it's risk-free in your home. If you don't love it, they'll pick it up and refund you everything. Free shipping and returns to U.S. and Canada. Of course, the mattress is made in America. There's a special offer for listeners of this podcast. You can get $50 off any mattress purchase by going to www.casper.com/test. And please be sure to use the offer code TEST. That's TEST. Terms and conditions may apply. Let's start the show.
Hey, let's start the show.
Hey, let's start the show for Thursday, November 3rd, 2016. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. This is only a test.
It's got an 8-bit feel, doesn't it?
It does.
That just me thinking, because you got me this awesome Edge special edition pixel art amazing thing.
I was at the bookstore for people who aren't watching the video.
Wait, what is that? What is a what kind of store?
A bookstore, a Barnes and Noble. You know, they had stands for the Nook there. Yeah. They had a whole kiosk section in the front for Nooks and Garmins and other things, but they also sold books. Now, I go to bookstores these days, I head straight for the periodicals. That's always my favorite section of a bookstore, honest to goodness. Even when I was a kid, Brentano's, Borders, periodicals. I love magazine design. Jeremy, you and I both came from the magazine industry.
Yeah, I used to read Piece of Gamer in my college bookstore before I started to work there.
Mm-hmm, same here. And I like how magazine covers have changed over time. It's like it's a piece of art. And the thing that caught my eye this visit was this bright Pantone pink cover.
Yeah, kind of looks like an old Wired cover. It's the Edge Special Edition, The Art of the Pixel. I thought it was going to be like a 10-page feature story on pixel art. It's no ads. It's a $20 tome filled with pixel art. God, how many pages are in here? Over 200.
Yeah, over 200 pages of just pixel art and interviews with pixel artists.
Thank you, Norm.
I said, Jeremy's got to love this. So I bought 2 copies, and now you have one.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of the reasons I got Jeremy that is because he babysat for me, my puppy, Danica and my puppy, over this past weekend while the three of us did a live show. So how are you guys feeling after that live show?
I woke up the next morning and I was immediately sick. It was like I had poured everything into that show, and I woke up and my body's like, "You're done. You're done now."
Yeah, it was just there behind the curtain.
It was. I don't know what to say. There was parts of that show that I was actually speechless. Like, I was shocked at
that it happened.
Not that it just happened, but just how amazing and surprised I was by what I was seeing.
Even though you'd seen how the sausage was made.
Yeah,
you were the sausage maker.
It's different when there's 1,000 people in that theater.
It's true.
Norm was the only speaker that I didn't see rehearse. And he played it off as though he still had to write it and he wasn't ready, and he was rehearsing and memorizing.
I did. All true.
When he got up there and he delivered the very first talk of the night, it was just the audience was hushed, and that he captured everything about that trip to the Arctic, and it was the most amazing talk I think that I've seen of the whole night, and I really want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you, Jeremy.
It was there was something really special there, and
even though I completely flubbed the opening.
Yeah,
I had memorized this whole opening welcoming people to the show, and that was actually the only thing I had to memorize because it was the only thing I didn't have presenter notes in front for. And my brain, it's the thing that you reel, like it's like playing poker. You never remember the things you did well. You only remember your bad breaks. And I remember flubbing Australia with Antarctica. And that just screwed me for the rest of the. And
Actually, the crowd was with you.
That almost sounded rehearsed because you just dove right into the correction.
Oh, I had to barrel roll.
Yeah.
I had to just like
Yeah.
somersault into the recovery, and I paused with like, nope, Australia to Europe, and then I just completely missed like what the next paragraph was in that opening, and I was told afterward that it wasn't actually that long. It was pretty long in my head. For an Android, it was an eternity. That's a Star Trek First Contact word.
Yeah.
What I think was amazing about this is when just to show you how the sausage is made a little bit. So we knew the first segment of this show for the longest time was going to be about Joey and Norm's trip to the Arctic. And Joey and I got stuck in traffic one day coming back from a shoot. And we're talking about this, and Joey's like, I don't really want to be up there with Norm on the segment. I'm like, what? What do you mean? And he said, I know what Norm's going to want to talk about. And he says this phrase. He's like, Norm's going to want to talk about the trip through the eyes of the technology.
Through the lens of technology.
Through the lens of technology. And then I came into the office, and that is exactly what Norm said to me.
Specifically Star Trek.
No. This is as we were formulating the talk. So Kishore not only runs the Bay Area Science Festival, but he show ran our show, which isn't. We had a stage manager who did the minute by minute day of production, but Kishore kind of oversaw the ebbs and flows, the pacing, the individual segments, and he's putting this is in his first rodeo, so we use Kishore as a guide for how to do these stage presentations. So as he and I were workshopping this show. This talk, the first thing I did say to him was, Kishore, I brought all this cool gear to the Arctic. I want to tell the story of how I use this cool gear. So I'm going to tell the story of the Arctic through the lens of technology.
And Joey was like, I don't want to be up there if he does that, which I think is hilarious. So I went back to something that was on this podcast. You remember the first podcast when Norm had come back?
Yep.
The first thing he says to us on the podcast about that trip is about feeling like he's on a Star Trek mission. So it was actually being part of that podcast that led us to the formation of that talk and the architecture of it. And I think full video of the show will be up for Tested Premium members at some point down the line.
Soon.
Yeah, some point soon. I just want to say it was fun. There's probably a lot of segments in the show that you don't know about. I got to ride along in a self-driving DeLorean, a fully autonomous drifting DeLorean, which was a highlight. Jeremy's segment, which was probably the most fun of the night. Do you want to tell them about it?
I got a lot of laughs, and half of them were with me. It was a talk on the last mile vehicles craze, boosted boards, segways, one wheels, that kind of thing. And it was a lot of fun. Went up there, and I flubbed the line too, but I didn't feel so bad because it wasn't the first of the night.
And you had rehearsed.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone who rehearsed on stage did so much better during the actual live show itself. Like in the and we've kind of talked about this. Adam talks about it a lot about his stage shows, both about flubbing lines and how he recovers, and how there's a time distortion effect when you're on stage, when you're talking to an audience, but also how you change what you say depending on the reaction of the audience and what you're getting from them. So I don't know if you felt that, Jeremy or Kishore, but like working, like you had this whole thing planned, but like there's ways that you delivered your lines in the moment that may not have been originally planned.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's part of the more you talk in public, you get more comfortable doing that.
I totally went off script. I had more interview-based segments than just sort of talking-based segments, and I completely went off script when I was doing those interviews. And sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't, but it was kind of fun ad-libbing.
It was a good show.
We had a lot of friends there. So Kenji, who you may remember from some of from the steak searing tested video, was there with kind of a really strange story into the depths of China. Annalie, who was on this podcast, told the story of a lost city.
Here in the States.
Yeah, and then I think we might be burying the most aggressive segment of them all. We got to do a live booze show with Will.
It was still entitled Inside FooVR, which is the technology company that Will Smith has been working on since leaving Tested.
Mm-hmm. And we had spent some time scanning in a number of Adam's props so that inside of Foo you could pick them up and hear Adam tell different stories about them. I think my favorite moment is when Norm tries to put on Adam's spacesuit. It was the Ryan Nagata spacesuit. I think.
Yeah.
You couldn't quite get it
What,
on.
you didn't like me playing with the dolls off to the side?
It was. I actually thought it was great. I mean, I really did. I thought that the live VR was something I'd never seen before, and very much an element of science fiction for the whole crowd.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do like a debriefing with Will about that, or with Adam about that. But it is, we'll go work and save it for the VR minute.
It was really fun. For those of you who came, thanks for coming.
Yes.
True. Love meeting everybody.
Yeah, let us know if you want us to do more of those. That was a lot of fun
We're
for me.
gonna do more.
I was talking to Adam just earlier, 2 days ago when we were recording Still Entitled for this week, and he's like, I think we can do like a 3-day event. Let's do a festival. Yeah, he really dug it. And of course, he dug it.
You know why he dug it so much? Is like because he got he got to sit in the audience and watch a bunch of it. I think, and he was like, "Wow, these people are doing some cool things."
Yeah, but dude,
I'm like, no kidding, Adam.
Adam is an active audience member. Like you
He
hear
is.
him from on stage.
He was heckling us from the audience, basically.
Yeah, which is fun. All right, let's get into some pop culture news.
So, slight callback to the live show. Jeremy's segment begins with the story of how some of our last mile vehicles have sucked for a long time.
They haven't met expectations.
Yeah, like the hoverboard, which, catches on fire.
Hoverboard.
Yeah, it's not the hoverboard of Back to the Future. Well, guess what? A hoverboard
Caught on fire.
caught on fire again just yesterday.
Burn it down.
Burned down a $1 million house.
Wow.
But
Wait,
I think
where was the house? Is this in San Francisco? Because that's like, it's a
Little one
two-room shack.
Yeah.
No, this looks like a pretty significant house. It's in Nashville.
Oh my god.
And what I think is actually kind of interesting is the family is suing Amazon.
Whoa.
So
Wait a minute. So not the hoverboard maker.
not the hoverboard. They purchased it through the marketplace store, W Deals, which is supposed to contain an original battery in the hoverboard, but it actually didn't.
Amazon stopped carrying them for a while, right?
Yeah, for the longest time. So I don't know what's going to happen here. Is Amazon liable for third-party sellers in terms of the content that like what is inside those projects, certifying them to be compliant, especially when they're batteries that have this history? I kind of don't know. I think it's an interesting question.
I don't know. There's got to be precedent on this. I imagine this case won't go anywhere.
I don't know. If you have lost your $1 million house, you hope it goes somewhere, right?
Well, if I lost I would certainly be suing somebody. But good luck.
I'm pretty sure that kid is never going the last mile ever again.
And to be clear, we did not have one of those cheap hoverboards on stage for our show.
No, we had some classy last mile vehicles up there.
Made in America devices. We had.
That's right. Made in Bay Area.
Bay Area, yeah.
2 of them.
Oh, which one's made in the Bay Area?
The boosted board and the one wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. Norm had the new Segway Mini Pro.
Yeah, that one's made in China.
and Will had the unicycle.
The SBU, which I believe is made in Portland, I want to say.
Simone also had the double robotics telepresence robot.
That's right.
Which
Also made in Bay Area.
do you think we're going to release video of that race somewhere? Because that was way too much fun not to.
Yeah, we might redo an intro for it. We raced these electric vehicles. We took them out to the track and
Yep.
Yeah, we raced them around the polo grounds. And as a colleague put it to me, he's like, the funniest thing was watching all the people on actual bicycles just dust all of you.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah, they had no time for us.
Yeah.
Other pop culture bits. You guys gonna watch Doctor Strange this weekend? That's the big movie coming out this week.
I am. My science festival ends on Saturday, and then Sunday I'm going to sleep and then wake up and go see Doctor Strange. I am way excited for this. mostly because it opens up a whole new realm of Marvel that we haven't seen, the sort of mystical realm. We're used to like the power v power type heroes, but I think Doctor Strange opens up this new landscape. I have avoided any reviews. Do we have any idea if it's supposed to be good or not?
I mean, I've only seen tweets from friends who have been to early screenings, and everyone is... I mean, the fact that Marvel's letting them tweet about it is a good sign, and everyone has said it's thumbs up, really great. It was also... Doctor Strange is... It was made in the 60s, right? He was of that like psychedelic era of comics, of like that psychedelic art. If you look at a lot of concert art posters, like that's that kind of fantastical era. I don't think this film evokes that. It's definitely more of the kind of mind bend that Inception maybe was, if you're talking about aesthetics. But I would love to see a more Kirby-esque psychedelic science or superhero film.
I think if they had set it in that period, we could get that. It's going to be harder to do because they're trying to keep the timelines consistent with the other MCU movies.
Right. What's been going on in the world of technology? I heard we had some more Tesla announcements. So last week we talked about Tesla saying that every car they're making forward will have the capability to do level 4, level 5 autopilot.
I went trick-or-treating with a dad who's in the tech industry, and he is highly skeptical that this is actually going to be true. That he was suggesting that Elon doesn't know well enough yet. If the software isn't finished, they can't possibly know with 100% accuracy that they have all the right sensors in there.
You're saying that someone who buys a Tesla Model S now or gets a Model 3 may need another attachment, a upgrade.
Yeah.
That's a terrible... If they need to take their car back to the factory to get the upgrade, it's not something they can install themselves. And I'm sure it's probably... They would need to... If it's a hardware upgrade, they would need to take it to the factory to get it certified. That's completely ruins the whole plan.
Just saying, it's a tall promise. And I believe Elon because he may not be good with schedules, but he tends to be honest about what he has delivered. But it's a good point that he doesn't know. He can't know for sure if the software isn't finished. Anyway, the new announcement.
Before we get to the new announcement, so Saturday night at the live show, I was talking to an autonomous vehicle researcher who is also skeptical
of this announcement.
Of this announcement. So I would say I think there's reasons to be skeptical. Maybe he's just trying to paint that optimistic future that he thinks we'll get to in that time. And everyone else is just more cautious until we actually demonstrate it in private. No one that I know has seen any demonstration that this can be done yet.
Wow. And also, I mean, I know we're going to get to that, the announcement. We know autonomous cars, it's not easy. There are a lot of promises made. There was the George Hotz, the guy who hacked the iPhone. He was working on his autonomous car company.
Oh, they closed that, right?
AI. He announced they're not going to do it anymore. NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Security Administration, Safety Administration, said that they weren't confident in this company's ability to sell a kit that anyone could put on their cars.
Oh, this was the $1,000 kit?
This is the $1,000 kit. So that's not even happening.
So wait, did NHTSA shut it down or did he shut it down?
He shut it down because NHTSA directed more scrutiny at his company.
That's like 6 1/2 dozen the other. Well, why don't we get to the actual Tesla announcement? How's your roof, Jeremy?
Not high tech enough?
Well, I have a flat roof, so I don't even know if I qualify for this.
Wait, isn't a flat roof better?
I don't know. Is it? So Tesla announced, I don't know what happened with the Solar City acquisition. Is that even going to happen? But they announced that they are just going to sell their own solar panels. But they're going to be basically built into the roof of the house. It'd be like tiles that are solar panels and connected directly to batteries.
This is the sexiest tile announcement I've ever seen.
It is sexy tile.
Sexy, expensive tiles.
I believe this was a play to push investors to approve the Solar City merger on one level. So let's talk about the actual tiles. So these are textured glass tiles that have a photovoltaic embedded below the surface. And they look good. Let's just say it right off the bat. There's like a bunch of different textures, like a slate one. They all look really good. They don't look like you're living inside of a Coke bottle or anything.
They don't look anything like solar panels.
No,
right?
not at all. I mean, they do look like, if you've been to any high-tech museum that has solar panels like in the roof, like the California Academy of Sciences, the solar panels there look somewhat similar to what you see here. But I think the real interesting point is that people were concerned they'd be brittle. And they showed demonstration of weight being dropped directly onto the shingles, and they are holding up better than any other tiles that are regularly used for roofs. Indicated that this roof would last 50 years versus 20 years for a regular roof.
Oh.
So they're talking in context of just like,
It's a better roof.
it's a better roof.
Yeah, which is like when you think, oh, you're going to put technology in something that's proven, yes, it'll be more expensive, but it's going to be more volatile.
Yeah, so, and then in terms of the science, the idea is because it's glass, you're basically transmitting all of the light through it to the photovoltaic, so you're not losing a ton of efficiency. Estimates are that it loses about 2%, and it's about 98% the efficiency of just a full regular solar panel.
But
So
a lot
you
more
use
coverage,
a little
right?
bit. What's that?
But a lot more coverage.
And also, you're not having to put up like a whole separate structure. You're not adding.
What's the difference between putting solar panels up and replacing your roof?
Well, I think there's a big aesthetic difference.
Yes.
And when you're thinking about like a house as an investment, resale value makes a big deal. I would rather get the house that looks like the house rather than the house that has a bunch of solar roofs on it.
Yeah.
Anyways, we don't know a whole lot else though. We don't know much about the efficiency of these shingles. We don't know how much power they're exactly going to deliver.
You just told me it was 98% efficiency.
Compared to a solar panel in terms of light throughput, but he didn't indicate like here's how much power they're going to put out. He talked about the Powerwall version 2 device that'll go there, and there's power ratings there, but we don't know much about the shingles, and we certainly don't know anything about cost, availability sometime in 2017. That's about it. So I think there's a lot of questions here because you can't just be like, okay, we're putting some shingles on the market. You have to train roofers to go install these. So I'm wondering what the whole ecosystem plan is and how much more expensive this is going to be.
I didn't read much about the Powerwall 2, but it looks like it has twice the energy storage capacity of the original.
I think it was 7 kilowatt hours power, 14 capacity or something like that.
Yeah. So this is not like go leave the grid kind of technology yet, but we're getting there.
No, I mean, if this works really well for capturing the energy from the roofs and taking your whole home off the grid, which was what the promise of this presentation was, that'd be a pretty significant upgrade versus where we are. Timing was weird, like the Friday before Halloween at like 8:00 Eastern.
That's a perfect time to announce something to not get press.
Yeah,
And maybe you're right. It is to make that deal go through.
it was initially supposed to be held up here in the Bay Area, and then he moved it to like Universal Studios or Universal City down in LA.
He was too busy attending the premiere of Nat Geo's Mars.
I guess so. I mean, but it's this weird set with like houses all around him and stuff. The whole thing was a little bit bizarre for me.
In other vehicle news, kind of going back to Tesla, going back up the chain, there was a study released earlier this week. That's kind of a big deal. Researchers at MIT, University of Washington, and Stanford conducted a study in Boston and Seattle on Lyft and Uber and the and behavior of drivers and who they pick up. And what they found is that drivers who have African American sounding names are less likely to be picked up.
You mean riders?
Riders, yes, riders are less picked up by the drivers. And women are much more likely to be picked up.
Okay.
So the information that the driver gets is just the name of the potential passenger. And that's how I assume that's how they select.
And a rating, right? Don't they see our rating?
I think they may see a rating,
But no photo
as
I mean,
well.
obviously.
No photo. And They did a study with 1,500 passengers, both Uber X and Lyft, and tried them at different times, and they found it to be statistically significant that these services discriminate.
Okay. That's too bad.
I'm not surprised. Like, I would think the bias, there's an inherent bias that exists oftentimes in a large enough sample size that it'll emerge. I wonder, were there any interpretations of these findings? Like, is it a significant enough bias that it actually caused?
They said that drivers are, in some cases, 4 times as likely to cancel on an African-American male passenger than a white male passenger.
This is horrible.
That's terrible.
But it just shows like these systems aren't, there are natural human and social biases that need to get worked out in these automated systems.
I'd like to take a deeper look at that study, though, and understand their sort of
their methodology
and design, and see how much we can actually extrapolate out from this study in terms of behavior in other markets.
It could just be Seattle and Boston. There's racist drivers in Seattle and Boston.
All right. So you have a Chinese last name, and is it Indian?
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys experienced Uber cancellations on you? No?
No. I've never. The only cancellations I've had are when the driver seems like they've been going in circles because they can't get to me because of traffic.
Yeah, I've canceled on drivers because of that purpose.
And I hate that Uber still or the services still charge you if the driver takes too long to get to you because of their poor driving.
I've had a driver cancel on me. I don't know.
No, and there's no reason given, right? You just
no. It's a frustrating thing.
Yeah. I mean, you also have to design. It's like the best experience is when you design your pickup location to be optimal for the driver.
Well, you're not optimizing just for the driver. You're optimizing for you too.
And traffic, right? But like the driver having to loop around, going one-way turns ruins everyone's experience. I will walk 3 blocks further to get to a place that's easier for them to pick me up.
I wonder if Uber will. They probably won't. If they'll make any changes based on this study. If they don't reveal the person's name or something like that.
I don't think they'll. Yeah, they'll. I don't know if they haven't said whether they'll address it or not. Kishore, you weren't here last week to talk about the Mac Pros. I want to hear your thoughts. You guys are both MacBook Pro.
I'm so ready to type emojis on a non-taptic little pad thing.
I can't tell if you're actually enthusiastic.
No, I'm
and
not
tired
enthusiastic.
And you're just exhausted from the science fair.
I am a little exhausted from the science festival. I'm not enthusiastic about the MacBook at all. I mean, I don't see what having that little bar is adding to anything in terms of functionality. Touch ID is the only thing on there that I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, Touch ID I think is going to be important to that ecosystem, to Mac ecosystem, and I would hope that going forward, Touch ID is part of every device they sell. No one has the Touch Bar yet. I think they have in stores, but none of the reviewers have the Touch Bar equipped MacBook Pros yet. The reviews that have come out today are of the 13-inch MacBook Pro without the Touch Bar, which people are equating to basically it's like a MacBook Air 13-inch put into this new form factor, which is thinner, better screen, whatever. What has come out since we talked about it last are just like all these small little differences between this generation and last generation and the limitations. Some people are pegging it on Intel, saying that Intel, just the chips that Apple wants to use to get this power efficiency, this class of chips, on the Intel side just doesn't support more than 16 gigs of RAM, which is a big complaint of
legitimate complaint too.
Pro consumers. A lot of developers want 32 gigs of RAM.
Well, Schiller said that it was a heat issue, that it would take too much power to do that and drain the battery down.
And I think you extrapolate that if they had chosen a chip that could do 32 gigs of RAM, then you wouldn't get the performance, the battery life performance. You'd maybe get more actual processing performance,
right,
but you wouldn't get the battery life. That's what they mean by performance and the form factor that they're selling for this Pro model, which, to be clear, Pro is not a label that denotes how people use it. It's really a label that denotes the pricing.
It used to, though. I think that's the rub. people who bought the MacBook Pro used to be able to do every Pro app that they needed on it. Nowadays, Pro means something more than it used to. Now it doesn't mean just video editing. It means virtual reality, 3D rendering, all kinds of high-tech stuff.
I've seen a lot of takes that basically say that all of these updates show that they don't really have any understanding of what these MacBooks are for anymore.
I think they have the understanding. They're just choosing to focus on a market that they can make more money on, and have maybe neglected the smaller market of hardcore users. There are people who are buying these System 76s, right? The alternate the Ubuntu computers, and developing on those, and those have been doing well since this announcement. There's also like things that we talked about last week, the butterfly keys. Like these new MacBook Pros use the keyboard that was in the 12-inch MacBook, which I don't think people are going to like. Have you guys used that keyboard extensively?
No.
It's so low travel. It feels like an inferior typing experience than your standard chiclet keys.
That's not good. I think the one thing that got me, I saw Ryan Block tweet this out, that it's been 4.5 years since the first Retina MacBook Pro and today's, and the CPU enhancements have only gone up between 10 and 20% in those 4.5 years. But if you look at ARM devices during that same time, their CPU improvements have increased 90%.
Well, I don't think that's fair. That's not fair.
I know it's not totally fair because we're not starting at the same point.
Yeah.
But it does indicate that it does illustrate the larger point that the MacBook's improvement in terms of processing power, it hasn't really been there.
Which is limited by Intel, because on the x86 side, you start off with high performance, high power consumption, and the generations have come since that launched a couple of years ago with Skylake, Kaby Lake, and even Haswell. You have those were all mostly for power efficiency improvements. While in ARM, you maintain power efficiency or lose a little bit of that, but gain performance because you're coming at from a different way. There's completely different architectures. It goes to the speculation that Apple will want to eventually port Mac OS to ARM, which there's a lot of people who believe that that's just a matter of time, that maybe this is the stopgap and they just have to do more work on Mac OS, and the next version of Mac OS or 2 versions down the line will run on a chip that they design themselves, and that the form factors they're building now, the expectations that they're building for the Pro line, are just teeing that up in the future.
Do you think that will be a net gain in processing power?
I also think that you can't equate processing power just by flops. You have to look at how apps run on devices. So, like, you can say, here's a Mac and here's a PC that have exactly the same Intel chip inside, but if the software is architectured to be better, to run better and more smoother because of memory management or something on one of those platforms, then you just have to look at how does Premiere run on this computer.
Well, as far as the touch bar goes, I'm not going to judge it till I use it. It's cool tech, and I think it's sexy. And so I'm excited to use it for that reason.
When is yours ship?
A couple weeks.
Why did you end up getting it? Did you feel like you were ready for an upgrade and this was just the right time?
No, my mom needs a new laptop, and so I'm giving her my old one. And it's this laptop, it's not brand new. It is from 2013. So it's 3 years old. So it's still working just fine, but I probably wouldn't get it if my mom didn't need a new laptop.
Excuse me. I feel like it's going to be a transition because I use the function bar a lot as is.
Do you?
I do. I use the escape key a lot. I use the volume keys a lot. I use some of the function switches a reasonable amount. I think there's going to be a learning curve, and I'm going to be really interested to see how long that actually takes you.
Yeah.
Because if it's short, then that bar could be okay. I have a sense it's going to take you a little while.
I'm not worried about that. I'm more excited to see how developers put it to use, and I'd love to see the web be able to put it to use. I want to see some sort of JavaScript SDK so that websites can take advantage of it.
You pretty much only talk to me emoji, so this will be great for you, according to the MacBook.
Yeah, there's a Hadfield emoji now.
What?
I mean, you can make one basically with a mustache dude and a rocket ship. Phil Schiller from Apple said that online sales of the MacBook Pro have outpaced any Pro laptop they've had before. Now, this could just be because they've waited so long and people have been holding off and waiting, and they just need something new, like in your case perhaps. But that's how they're spinning it. He did say that he was a bit surprised about the negative feedback, but also that's cool.
He said that's cool.
He said, yeah. He goes, he says he's never seen a great new Apple product that didn't have its fair share of criticism and debate, and that's cool. He also compared it to the iMac. People didn't like the iMac when it was first announced too. Don't compare it to the iMac. I think
this doesn't sound cool. This sounds like he's saying "f you" more than it's cool.
I don't know. I hope someone in there's taking note. The fact that you can't connect an iPhone to it without an adapter or new cable is just. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. No sense at all. Johnny Ive recently said that he's responsible for not having a touchscreen iMac or Mac.
He's responsible. He's in charge of all the UI.
He and his team vetoed that years ago, he said.
Wow.
Now, that's clearly the direction they should have gone in, and I hope that someone is knocking some sense into them.
And Phil Schiller said they've looked at it. He said, okay, one example why the Mac and the iOS are completely different identities is the menu system. On Macs, you have menus at the top. Just like in most windowed UIs, you have many menus at the top. iOS doesn't. They're full screen applications. But you can do full screen also on a Mac. But also they said they tried it and they did not like the finger on the touchscreen. I think he still calls it a bad experience.
They didn't want to watch video on an iPod either, right? I mean, it's like, and they didn't like the headphone jack. How happy did that make people?
Yeah.
They don't have the best judgment.
Yeah.
They need to do better market research.
They think their judgment is how people should. I mean, they don't care about what people want. They care about what they want.
Yeah, because that's possibly a skill that Steve Jobs legitimately had.
He knew what people didn't know they wanted?
Yeah.
He would just go stand outside with his finger to the wind, listening for...
The Henry Ford.
He doesn't need the wind to let him know. He just needs himself. He can shove that finger elsewhere and know where...
The Henry Ford quote that Steve Jobs always said, if you ask people what kind of what they want, they would want a faster horse. But of course, what they needed was a car, and Steve Jobs was great at that. He brought us lots of great inventions through the wonderful engineers at Apple. But I don't think that necessarily there's people there in his wake that have the same skill set.
And now they're selling us a car that has no USB ports.
I'm less angry about the little details like the headphone jack, the USB ports. I feel like Apple back a few years ago was very clear. There was always like a binary choice or one of three choices. Now I feel like there's so many SKUs. I'm really, as just a basic consumer, like telling, going to decide what to buy. It's much more confusing to decide what I want.
Yep.
Yeah. When you talk about the lines being called MacBook, being a premium product, just MacBook, which previously was a cheap $1,000 product, not cheap, but like for them, the low end. And now the Air, which previously was the premium line, now being the affordable $1,000 line. And then the Pro having three distinct models that are different and two MacBook Pro 13 inches that have differences beyond just the touch bar.
It's just too many SKUs. Like there should be 2 or 3.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's really the biggest complaint about this is if it was simple and you knew the divisions and that's where the technology splits around USB or headphone jacks or whatever it is came about, I'd be much more behind it.
Amen.
I mean, let's go back to the touchscreen discussion, right? Like, I have no doubt that before, even though Johnny Ive says they shut down the idea of touchscreens on Macs, I'm sure they did the research. I'm sure there are people who have bought Microsoft devices or have even tried putting touchscreens on Mac OS.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, that's something they have to have tested. And what it feels like is the decision they made is that the touchscreen would not change, would not be a paradigm shift enough in the way people use the Mac.
I'll tell you what would have been if they had released iOS apps on Mac OS 10.
But ergonomically, their fear is ergonomics, right? Their fear is that people they don't, because the way they've designed their Macs, they lock at that L shape angle, that wide L,
Yeah.
right? They're not going to do these convertible 2-in-1s.
Do you have a problem reaching up to touch your touchscreen?
I don't, and the reason is that I see the touchscreen, the way I use a touchscreen on a touchscreen Windows laptop, is as a complement to the keyboard, trackpad, and mouse. Like it's only there. It's like it's flagship expensive feature that I use only occasionally, but the tiny places in which it helps my day-to-day use of scrolling or hitting a dialog box or swiping in from the side to move between desktops, those little things make it worth that premium feature. And I don't think Apple wants to put a touchscreen on their Macs if, for the majority of people, if it's not going to change the way people use their computers in almost every way they would interact with the Mac. Like, they wouldn't want to do it just to have it be a 10% feature.
Okay. Well, I hope that the touch bar is a paradigm shift. Right?
That's what they're selling it as.
We'll see. I mean, I should not be a snarky. We should hold back some judgment until we see it, like you said.
Yeah.
And I'll be excited to see how well you adapt.
Yeah. If you want to buy an old Mac, you can at least get some discounts on storage upgrades.
What do you mean?
So it just came out that Apple did drop some prices on SSD upgrades for the older Mac lines.
Wait a minute. Apple offers SSD upgrades? I didn't know that.
I mean, if you want to upgrade from the stock model when you're buying it.
I see what you mean.
The price jump,
Gotcha.
the upsell. Yeah. So for the upgrade options in the iMac, Mac Pro, Mac Mini, MacBook Pro, 2015 model, they're up going from 512 gigabyte to a terabyte SSD is $200 less. So I think it makes buying last gen models even more enticing if you want to get in on those before they kill the products.
You want to fly through the rest of the tech news before we get to the VR minute?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's funny, we're in presidential election season here in the U.S., which will be over in less than a week. I can't believe.
Thank goodness.
And there's all this talk about transition plans. And the most interesting transition plan I saw is the current president has a social media transition plan to preserve all of his accounts. So everything from how he used Snapchat filters and his Twitter account to Medium account, they're all going to transition to new handles so he can maintain all of those followings.
Wait a minute. Not, you don't mean like WhiteHouse.gov is going to become his own account?
But he has a Twitter handle that's @POTUS. That's going to transition to like @POTUS44.
No.
So he maintains all of those followers.
Really?
Yeah, and it's so I feel like
Wait,
a little bit weird about it.
But he has his own Barack Obama Twitter account too, right?
No, he uses POTUS.
Oh, wow.
And he loses POTUS. It's what happens. It's
So what feels weird about it is if you followed POTUS on Twitter,
yep.
were you following Barack Obama or were you following the president? So I feel like that account should. I feel a little weird about that.
On the other hand, if I follow Kishore Hari, and I do, and then some dude took it over,
Yeah.
I don't want to follow that account anymore. I want to follow Kishore Hari.
That's why there's the
depends what
White
dude.
House
Yeah.
Twitter account. That's why there's the official the
Yeah.
institution.
Right.
But it is called POTUS.
Now I know.
So it was a decision made a while ago. It's just like the Queen.
That's
Right.
tricky. That's tricky.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's kind of cool that there is a transition plan. I mean, because he was the first one to use social media in this kind of way. So
That's special treatment by Twitter. That's not cool. Has he been verified, this POTUS guy?
I don't know.
You know, we should get on that. Get ourselves verified. It's apparently not that difficult a process these days. There's a whole form, as long as you can get meet the minimum requirements.
There are a couple new. Everyone I think probably here knows that I'm a huge fan of Roku's. There's a couple new features coming out with a new Roku OS. One that's really worth mentioning. So some Roku models have private listening where you can plug in headphones into the remote, which allows you just to listen.
That's cool. Talking to this thing.
Am I not talking into this?
When you
thing?
look at me, it goes soft.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I'll stop looking at you, Jeremy. So now they have they have the ability through the app on your phone to do private listening. So now if you just have your phone with you, you can plug in headphones and listen to your Roku without the speakers on, which I think is kind of great.
What? With no latency? Like, that's crazy.
I don't know if it has no latency. We haven't tested it out.
That's interesting.
I think this is a great feature because oftentimes I'm watching TV after my wife falls asleep. So I put on headphones. And this is a great little touch. Now I just need my phone near me.
Which you probably do. That's pretty great. That's awesome. Now, the video doesn't show up on your phone, right? You're just using it for audio, and it uses a Roku app to do that. Mm-hmm. I like it.
In other cell phone news, you had the Lenovo Fab 2 that got launched. This is the first consumer phone, Fab 2 Pro, consumer phone with Tango. This is Google's augmented reality camera system. It's $500 phone. I saw it earlier this year. It's a pretty big phone, and I think it was still struggling with battery life. But it's a 6.4-inch screen, and it has the Tango AR technology, which you can use to put virtual furniture in your room and play some games.
Well, they also said they got inside-out tracking working using Tango.
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. So it's not a phone, I think, it's for most people. I think it's going to be one of those phones for developers and professionals who need those AR tools for their work. But I'm glad that Tango is out there now. Kishore, you also weren't here last week when we talked about Nintendo Switch. Is that something you're into?
No, I don't think I'm going to get it. My kid isn't old enough to be into like Wii U, that stuff yet.
What Nintendo consoles have you owned?
Have I owned?
Yeah.
I stopped at the 64.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I haven't had a Nintendo anything since then.
So what does your kid play?
On tablets right now, for the most part.
Yeah, that's where
he
it's at.
has. My wife used to work for Leapfrog, and so we had a lot of like Leapfrog tablets, and they had a gaming console and stuff.
Oh.
He's only 5.
Real educational.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be a nerd. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. But like he's just a little bit too young for all of that. And for me, I didn't like. I never bought the Wii because I didn't really ever love any of the games on it. So I always had an Xbox or a PS4 or PS whatever.
So you're not the guy who has to play every Mario game.
No,
because
not at all.
the Wii had some great Mario games. I mean, Mario Galaxies were great. But all right,
What about Mario Kart?
all right.
Did you want your kid to know Mario Kart?
He'll get there. It'll be on iOS devices by the time he's older.
Well, there's a rumor that Nintendo, if you don't buy your Wii soon, your Wii U, you may not be able to because Nintendo may be shutting production of Wii U's.
That's kind of surprising.
They've refuted the rumor, but
Okay.
it's not the first time that someone has reported they've been shutting down production in preparation for another console launch, and they've said, "Oh, nothing's changing," but it actually had changed. It is. It seems like they're putting a lot of eggs in this Switch basket.
Had any news on whether the Switch has a touchscreen or not?
I don't think so.
I mean, maybe that's a reason why they would want to shut down Wii U, is just to cut that as short as possible so that they don't have to worry about the backwards compatibility problem forever.
I can't wait for the secondary market on kickstand replacements, though.
Oh, yeah?
That thing is going to break like that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
The latest reports say that it does have a touchscreen.
That'd be weird, right?
that's
If it
good.
didn't after the Wii U.
yes,
Yeah.
but the ad didn't show anybody touching the screen.
Yeah, no mention of touchscreen in that video, which is very, very weird. No stylus, no fingers scrolling. I mean, the games they were showing, I guess the rationale could be they just wanted to show these core games. They wanted to show off these controllers. These removable 2-player controllers are the big novel feature in this. People have seen touchscreens, so maybe just taking for granted that it does have a touchscreen.
We had some breaking news while we were here on the podcast.
Really?
Yeah. Something that's important to me. So I got into cooking mostly because of Alton Brown and his show Good Eats. Have you ever seen Good Eats?
Nope.
Norm?
A couple episodes here and there.
It was the first show that, at least for me, merged science and cooking together in a way that I learned something as well as learned how to cook. So I understood the basis of why something was happening. And he did it with like his traditional kitsch, and it really launched him to fame. Well, he announced that he is he's making a sequel to Good Eats online. So he's making an internet cooking show that is coming out sometime in 2017. He's doing it on the internet so that he has full control over the content. So if he wants to make a squirrel pie in his words, that he can experiment with like different newer techniques that Food Network didn't really want him to. So I am deeply, deeply excited about this. And he indicated in a Facebook video chat that this will be much more responsive to what fans want to see too.
How's he distributing it?
We don't know yet. All he said was that it was an internet cooking show. So I don't know if he has a service picked out, or if it's just going to be YouTube, or if there is even a subscription model in play here. But I'm excited to see him return to these roots. This is where he's the best, and why he became who he is. Not from hosting like Cutthroat Kitchen and all of those other.
Yeah.
Back to cars for one moment. Consumer Reports has reviewed the Chevy Bolt, which I have on order, so I'm excited to read this. They liked it, but they called it a dorky-looking little box. And
when did that ever scare you off?
Wozniak?
Compared to the Tesla, it's
Compared to the Tesla.
yeah. They admit that it does not have curb appeal.
In the pocket of Big Elon.
No, not at this phase of my life. I have chosen my mate.
It's up to you to make it look less dorky.
Right
All
on.
your decals you can put on that car.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, other breaking news: my Google Home just shipped.
Oh, cool.
Mine did too.
Like, look forward to hearing. I didn't order one, so I look forward to hearing about that.
I can't wait to test it. Let's get
Wait.
Yep,
One last thing about that. What room are you going to put it in? This is the big choice, I think.
This is the big choice. I think it's going to be the living room.
That's where I was going to put it.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to find different rooms.
Right.
On this subject, we did buy a bunch of the Amazon pucks.
Oh, you did? Okay, now that you can just buy them willy-nilly.
Yeah.
They still don't work together.
$50. They do. That's what I wanted to tell you.
Oh.
Is there's a mesh network now where only the one closest to you responds.
That's
That's
good.
I did some really intricate testing where I walked just an inch closer to one, and I finally found the threshold, and it was right in between. I was very
Really?
impressed. Yeah, very impressed.
And it wasn't just you, like it wasn't something about like your voice, like it worked pretty consistently across different people.
It's worked for everybody.
Wow.
That's pretty impressive.
Good job, Echo.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
Speaking of Google products shipping, the Daydream View is going to be on sale. They've announced November 10th is when you can buy one to work with your Android phone that supports Daydream.
Oh, it's not just Pixel?
It's not just Pixel. But, of course, if you did buy Pixel, which is now back-ordered and delayed, you will get your Daydream View with that as well. Sure, yours, I still assume, has not shipped yet, your Pixel. Yeah, are you getting that $50 credit?
Oh, I didn't check my email, but I did hear about that.
I got to use one.
Daydream Pixel?
Yeah, not Daydream, just the Pixel.
Oh, just the Pixel phone.
Yep. It's snappy, pretty phone, great low light pictures.
Oh, that's great.
That's what the reviews have said. You want to talk a little more about Foo and that experience?
Of watching it?
Of watching it and me of using it?
Yeah.
It was pretty entertaining. And all I wanted to do while I was watching it was be in that room with you.
Yeah.
In a headset. Like, that's the thing, is like watching it live is such I felt totally on the edge of technology, and I couldn't wait to put my own headset on and like stand there and pick up stuff while you were talking.
Right. On stage, the way there's some magic in the sense that it's a social VR experience. That's what this demo specifically is. And the three of us wearing those headsets, being in the same physical space as we were in the virtual space. So when I looked to Will and Adam in the virtual space, that's where they were. If I reached out and tried to high five or hand something, that's where they would be. There was some
You did bump into each other a few times.
only because of the sensors, the tracking sensors. When I was trying to grab stuff out of his hand. There's something really cool about that. But I haven't been able to use it in this instance. Is it even cooler when you're using them remotely and when it becomes a virtual chat room?
That's the more common usage for this kind of thing.
That would be, yeah. And that's what I feel like is the real potential for people to connect, for it to be a virtual chat room. I know Will's making shows about this stuff. It really showed that even with these 3 points of tracking, as long as you can build an avatar, you have this real good connection to the virtual person that you're chatting with because they have animation and their hands are tracked, and it's not just it felt more compelling than the floating heads that we saw with Oculus.
Oh, you think having a full body
Having a
improves
full
things?
body.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's having a little more one-to-one. Obviously, nothing was perfect. The feet weren't tracked, so they had to and extrapolate some of that movement. But within the confines of the stage space, it worked really well.
So the three of you spent a lot of time talking to each other on the podcast over the years. Did you ever find yourself forgetting where you were and going back to just sitting around that table?
Did you get lost in virtual reality?
At some point, I did forget that we were. I mean, it was very. There was a big jump you had to make when taking off the headsets. You forget. Consciously that you're in a room with 1,000 people. You can hear them laughing, but you forget what that physical space is. And I think it's the case with all VR. If you're in VR for a long time and you're using the Vive or the Oculus, but you're in your office, you're in your living room, but when you take the headset off, there's a little bit of just reconfiguring your brain for the real world.
I thought it's interesting, but going back to what you said initially, is that FooVR was made to make virtual reality shows that are recorded behind the scenes and then released to the public.
Right.
Where this, you actually got to see the recording. And I think, I'm not sure, having not watched it in VR yet, I wonder if this will elevate the experience of watching it in VR, that I will then get to be in something that I saw live.
Right.
It's almost like being able to re-experience something even more intimately.
Or for people who weren't in the theater.
Exactly.
Whether for them it'll be like the equivalent of watching a sitcom that was recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what it's like. I almost wonder if the recording of the actual recording should not be a part of the Foo experience somehow, so that you see the reality.
Video.
Yeah, so
recording?
that you see the reality that you're, injecting yourself into.
So maybe it's a camera facing outward,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's downloaded Foo, I've bought this episode and I've put on the headset and I'm watching, 3 people chat and podcast, and they did it on stage. You obviously didn't track the audience. They're not all wearing headsets, but they had reactions to it. So maybe it's a camera that's looking out to them, and it's like a flat screen. That you get
I was thinking
them.
there'd be a TV in the virtual space,
Right,
something like that.
right.
Yeah.
You have to literally go through the TV back out to the real world just to see some of that, or at least hear them.
Yeah, or I was thinking the TV in the virtual world would be just a feed of the video of the performance.
The other thing that shifted for me is ever since Will first told me about Foo, I thought about Foo as a thing for gamers to see their favorite games and hear from the game designers. This really showcased to me that it's not about that. It that is one aspect of what this could do really well. But as long as you have the assets there, I mean, this can be used to talk to anybody in VR where there's that value proposition. And I think there was a high value proposition here because it means something when you're able to hold that prop that Adam built and hear him talk about
Well,
it. It's so personal.
The laser scans of Adam's props were crucial to that experience. So that's a step most people won't have the ability to take.
Agreed. That's why I said the assets have to be there. But I was pleasantly surprised because I was very skeptical whether that would work or not, because you're not immersing yourself in a world like a game creates. You're just going to see something somebody has built. Would it work for that? And I think it really did.
I do too.
Yeah. The other big piece of VR news. Well, on the Oculus side, I quickly want to note that they announced that Dead and Buried will be free.
More free.
Oh my goodness!
The 3 free games at launch.
At launch, and 4 total.
Yeah.
Right. That's insane. Right, for Oculus Touch. What does that signal to you?
That they're generous.
Are you sure about that?
That Mark Zuckerberg.
That you're being generous
Mark
about that.
Zuckerberg cares.
I think it signals that they really want people to feel good about their $200 purchase for a $600 accessory. And when Mark Zuckerberg on stage announced that they were going to double down on their $250 million investment in VR development to make it $500 million, I bet that's some, I'd be curious to hear whether that includes the money they would consider losing not selling this game to their users. Like if they're using that as a accounting, like they're rounding with their accounting. Like it's not just money being given to developers to make games, but they're also including their own development costs and the money they wouldn't be making.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is an interesting choice because this is a game that would have sold well.
Yeah.
I mean, just like what's the Insomniac game that I love so much with the magic?
The Unspoken.
The Unspoken. Thank you. I don't know what it is about that name. I can never remember it. But that's one I would have bought. So yeah, they're leaving money on the table in some sense, but on the other hand, they're giving everybody, and there are multiplayer components to this, so they're seeding that community, which may be just as part of their equation.
Right, and they brought in the team that worked on Chronos to do some work on this game.
On Dead and Buried?
On Dead and Buried.
Oh.
They talked about how they're going to have these multiplayer modes where two teams go back and forth, kind of like that jousting game. What was it called?
A jousting game.
You know that 2D flat game where you fight?
Oh, yes, the Atari 2600 looking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget.
I hope it's called Joust.
It's not Joust. But like in terms of how their multiplayer games are going to play out, like they're big arenas where you go back and forth along a train.
Yeah.
And if you beat the enemy team, then you progress forward to the next stage, and it's a big tug of war.
It's a heist mode, I think.
Yeah, right. I'm really glad it's free. They put a lot of money in Farlands also when Oculus Rift came out.
Did they? Did they do that internally?
That was the first party.
Wow.
So it's safe to assume that most of their first party stuff when they launch with consoles will be free. And it was curious when we asked them at Oculus Connect whether Dead and Buried would be free. It was still up for discussion. I always assumed it would be because they developed it first party. That's why I was surprised when they said VR
they weren't sure.
Sports and also when they said VR Sports and Unspoken will additionally be free.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's lack of faith on their users to buy and adopt stuff.
I'm now subscribing to my theory about multiplayer community, that they need that seeded well to get all the players, enough players out there so there's always people playing. Because
it's a no-brainer for anyone who bought the Rift to buy Touch, at least from our perspective. Like, do they really need to convince people that, to buy Touch? Like, you're getting, it's like,
yeah,
I know they wouldn't consider it the incomplete experience, but I think for us, it is the incomplete experience when you have Rift without Touch.
Yeah.
Unless you're just playing cockpit games, gamepad or joystick games, and that's all you're playing. But then that's not the full potential of VR.
True that.
Product-wise, Fove announced their pre-orders today. This is the headset that does eye tracking with the potential for foveated rendering. They did a crowdsource campaign, and now you can pre-order one. They're starting to ship their Kickstarter rewards and headsets next month, I believe.
So it doesn't do foveated rendering, right? I mean,
well, it supports it.
What does that mean? How dense is the panel?
The panel is a little higher resolution than the Rift and Oculus panels.
It is.
It's 2560 by 1440. And I believe the Oculus panel is 2160 by 1200, I want to say. 2160 by 1200 is the Rift and Vive panel. So it's higher pixel density. They're not using the same lenses, so it's like Gear VR style. They're just going to pack as many pixels as they can. It's also running at 70 hertz, which they'll say, faster than Gear VR. So it's basically a cranked up Gear VR, because Gear VRs also have 2560 by 1440. But that's not, the display is not the important part of this. It's not about field of view. It's not about display. It's about the technology that they put in this headset that the other headsets don't have right now, which is eye tracking.
Right.
So the eye tracking system is the same with what we saw last year. These IR LEDs that point at your eyes, and then a camera system that's pretty invisible. You don't see it. It just looks at your eyes and sees your eyes. And they have the software that can with calibration, see the shape of your eye, see your where your pupil is, and extrapolate using their prediction algorithms and their machine learning where you're looking at in that screen, in that field of view.
Mm-hmm.
I really wonder how well this works without knowing much about the science of it, how well it's going to work between users. So Jeremy's eye is obviously very, very different shade of color from mine. How well that's going to
and that's what Michael
differentiate.
Abrash talked about at why eye tracking is one of the things that and foveate rendering is one of the things that will get us to those high pixel density screens and to be able to render in with the technology that we have in the next couple of years. But the challenges are that everyone's eyes are different. Talking to the CTO at Fove, they said they were 65% there in terms of where they hope to be in perfect eye tracking. But the 65% isn't in terms of, it's not that they can't track your eyes, it's because of the differences in eyes. And some people wearing glasses, they'll have to accommodate for that. And the lens systems, everyone's, like you said, everyone's eyes are different. Some people, the colors of eyes are different, the shape of eyes are different, and they just need more data, I think, to make it work.
Michael Abrash showed a slow motion video of somebody's eyes moving and stopping, and it warbled. Like it's like a fluid, viscous surface to your eye.
Right. Some other interesting thing is that they're refreshing the eye tracking at 120 hertz, which they think is sufficient for the eye tracking.
Mm-hmm.
It's higher refresh rate than your frame rate that you're going to get in today's screen. So you're going to see if they represent where they think your eye is on screen, you're going to see that jump around pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it's also that your eyes don't, your brain, even though your eyes constantly flicker back and forth and jump around, your brain doesn't know where your eyes are until they settle. So in between eye movements, in between moving from left to right in that split second, your brain isn't registering that. It only registers it once your eye settles. Mm-hmm. But at that point, it registers depth of field immediately. So they have to still have that work. The demos they showed were interesting.
Wait, what does this have to do with depth of field?
Foveate rendering. So what they can do is knowing where your eyes are. So I'll talk about the demos first.
Foveated rendering is just a matter of rendering the spot on the screen that you're looking at.
Right. But they're using that way, that the performance savings there, to then add more post processing to add depth of field effects for where your eyes are looking.
In Z?
In Z.
Where my eyes are focused?
Where they think your eyes are focused.
Well, that's totally different. That's amazing.
It doesn't work that well.
Right.
So they showed a couple of demos. One demo was their foveate rendering demo, which was, okay, they can, instead of drawing 4K textures, they can draw 512, 5x512 textures, a lot of performance savings there. And what that means is that they could do these post-processing effects where if I've move my eye really quickly and it settles on the background, where they think it's the background, then they'll have that in focus and everything around
bit out of focus. So if they know on the screen what you're looking at, it's like ray casting. They can tell where that is in Z.
Right.
Interesting.
And then put a post-processing effect around it.
Oh, wow.
But it doesn't work fast enough and accurately enough in the demo they showed for it to be a dramatic effect. Like I had to just lock my eyes on the foreground, and then that was crisp and things in the back, and then quickly shift around and focus. It required concentration to see the effect.
But you could imagine this evolving.
I could imagine it would need to work much faster. They'd have better predictive algorithms and just more computational power. But that was their demonstration of one way to take advantage of performance savings with foveated rendering. The thing that was more interesting was eye tracking as a cursor and eye tracking as a game mechanism. So when we think about like gaze-based shooters in VR, when you're wearing Gear VR and a lot of those games, if you don't use controllers, you're basically Cyclops, right? You're moving your head around. That head movement ends up being taxing. And eye movement is much less taxing if it's done well. So they had this gaze-based shooter where your head could be perfectly still and you're just looking around, and immediately, the moment your eye settles, the laser beams shoot out, and it can destroy the enemy robots flying at you.
And that felt pretty responsive?
It felt very responsive. The thing that they didn't have in that demo was a way for you to control the activation of the eye beams.
Yeah, just instantaneously.
Right, it was just instantaneous once your eyes settle. But they can, with the eye tracking, they can have actions and calls tied to blinks because they know when you'll be blinking. So when your pupil gets dilated,
Right.
So all these subtle things that developers can eventually get access to, as long as they surface that data. So I think the potential is there. This is not a consumer piece of technology they're selling right now. I think it's for developers. It's $600. The tracking system they're using now is based off of OSVR, which gives them fine positional tracking. But eventually, their next gen version will use Lighthouse. But it's important for VR because eye tracking is one of those things that we need someone to work with, work on.
I don't think you should underestimate the power it will have just socially when you can see someone else's avatar's eyes move naturally.
Right. And right now, you have to fake that.
Exactly.
You have to fake it based on where it thinks your eyes are or your character you're looking at and lock on them, or fake it based on where your head is pointing at, or just play an animation. But having actual eye movement based on where someone's looking and face tracking in general. I think face tracking is something that Fove also wants to get into eventually, not just knowing where your eyes are, but the intentionality of your mouth and what your face is doing. And that's going to be, the big business opportunity there is obviously advertising. It's something that Facebook obviously would love to build into VR.
Yeah.
As they build Facebook for VR.
Seems almost out of Futurama. Can we skip ahead? I have this awesome thing that I have to do.
Yes,
in a
I'm so
couple
sorry.
minutes.
Wow.
I have to talk to Chris and Evan Hadfield about your Arctic trip.
Wow. All right. Let's go quickly to what we've been testing.
Let's skip the music.
Here's what we've been testing. I have a couple products I'll be reviewing. The HP Omen 17 is a gaming laptop, has a NVIDIA GTX 1070 in there, and so far it's performing really well. And I'm looking at the numbers I have on this laptop and comparing them to desktop 1070s, and they're pretty comparable. So look for that next week. Also just got Astro A50s, gaming headsets. I got the PS4 versions because I want to test them in VR for PCVR and also PSVR.
Cool. I'm going to test sleep after my science festival is done.
Let me know how it goes.
I'm still recovering from Halloween. Did you go trick-or-treating?
Yeah, it was a field goal post. My son was a football player. It was really embarrassing.
That's pretty great.
I saw you from the Bone Zone.
Yeah, I was Ken
Looking
Bone.
good.
Yep. Someone asked me if I decided yet. Thought that was
boy.
funny.
Oh, nice.
Committed. All right. Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode. Do we have an outro this week?
No.
All right, let's just sing it. All right, that's Kishore, that's Jeremy, I'm Norm, and we will see you next week. Sorry for cutting it short.
Peace out.
Bum 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 bum. Oh, is this thing on? I guess it is.
Bum, bum, bum.
Tested.
Bye.